So I thought I'd put Matt on as a panelist. Hi, Matt.
Hey, hey. Does it, I mean, could someone just join saying Matt Howard and go, hi, Gene?
Well, you did have to like generally fake it, and I think you're actually authenticated.
Does it? Hmm. Someone just join saying Matt Howard and go, hi, Gene.
Well, you did have to like generally fake it.
Well, I've got like an echo, I think, from
Yeah,
the
I'm fixing that.
recording. Mhm.
Let's see. It's the YouTube live is like feeding back around.
Probably won't stay on for a very long time because it is 12:30, but I figured I'm only one beer and a half a wine in, so should be good to hang out for a bit.
Ah, I found the offending web tab, and now we're not going to hear ourselves with about a 5 second delay. Let's see. Recognize a lot of the faces and names in the chats. Bram is on the road, so we might hear from him, we might not, but we'll see. One thing I do want to tell folks as we're kind of getting started, it's still about a minute before. A lot of folks were, I think, disappointed that they couldn't make some of the clubhouses because they had Android or other things. I want to make it clear that we try very hard to make sure that everything's very accessible. Those are generally not put on by us. They're either put on by a community member or, in one case, CoinDesk, in the other case, Cointelegraph. I think the Cointelegraph one was not recorded, but the CoinDesk one was, and we're just waiting for CoinDesk to release the replay of that. But this is streaming live to YouTube. It's being recorded and will be immediately posted on YouTube automatically, which is great. And we'll take questions in probably general, and also obviously here on the chat. So my first question, since we're sitting here cavorting, where are you on the NFT spec?
Oh, how far along? Well, so it got redesigned. So we have this singleton now, which is kind of going to be the universal singleton, and the NFT is probably going to be based off of that. But it's a move towards um, identities and objects being represented on the blockchain, and once you have the good singleton, then you can build a lot of things off of that. So you get your building blocks, and then we can have the fun NFTs.
The very first official question is from our favorite marmot lover, and it was, of course, win exchanges. Anyway, perfect. Thank you. Let's see. There's a couple folks on the call that I'm perfectly happy to remote to panelists, but I don't want to do it if you don't want to be on live. But I know Freddie Coleman's on the attendees list. I know, let's see, Efficient is on the attendees list. Um, Feel free to raise your hand if you'd like to be a panelist and don't just want to ask a question. Uh, Question I think we'll get a few times today. When's the pool protocol to be released? We kind of expect, I'd like to say May, but I can't guarantee May, so it could slip into June, but that's the basic time frame. We're very focused right this second on getting our transaction fork out and in so that we can hit our first transaction date. One important thing about that is that we're running about 8% too fast each day, which was somewhat expected. But it does mean that the due transaction deadline has moved up a day or two already. When we fork in the new transaction fork, we'll probably actually push it out a little bit to aim for May 3, which is a Monday instead of like starting transactions on a Saturday, which, I don't know, feels weird. Okay, somebody asked a really long question. So long it's going to be a hard question. Somebody, if you have a long question, please break it down into shorter questions that we can actually answer. So my other question is Steven hanging around?
Yeah, he's chilling. Uh,
There's Steven. Steven has quite the reputation for Zoom attendance.
Absolutely love him. He's got a little purr going on right now as well.
So a question was, where are all these petabytes coming from? And it's, well, there's a whole lot of people, I think, who think this is going to be an interesting project. And the one way you can plot a lot is in parallel. And if you have a lot of people plotting in parallel, you have a lot of parallel. Though it is nice that, everyone kind of has to bear that burden of actually plotting. It's not like you can just kind of snap your fingers and all of a sudden have a petabyte. But when tens of thousands heading toward hundreds of thousands of people start wanting a petabyte, that's kind of what we see. So apparently I look like Tim Allen or Santa. I'll take most of that as a compliment. Thank you.
The friends of mine who've joined in for Chia Zoom events have said that they specifically really like your voice.
So in a different reality, I was actually planning to become a sportscaster and actually work professionally in radio before college. So, but then the internet needed a little fixing and I got kind of sidetracked. This gear is actually part of my recording studio, and I sold most of it off because it was just collecting dust. But I figured this was a nice piece to have left, and it's become very useful during the pandemic. Let's see. Plotters have improved a lot lately, even more to come after the Bitfield and TempSpace improvements. What does that kind of look like? So for those of you who have been paying attention, we improved the plotter when we released the 1.0 version of the plotter in 1.03. The underlying dependencies aren't always on the exact same version as the version that we have y'all running. That was about a 15% speed up or so. Our goal is to try to get bitfield plotting to be faster than no bitfield plotting on almost every device. It comes with a little caveat, pre-Nehalem. Nehalem is microarchitecture from Intel. Those CPUs before that can't bitfield plot for a couple of different reasons. So we may leave no bitfield in for that reason. That's still kind of up in the air, but those are processors that are older than 2010. We have a new release probably Monday, but we want to also try to get some database improvements in before we release that release because too many people are getting corrupt databases. We have a pretty good sense of what that is, but it's taking some time to mow all those problems down. But with that new release, 1.04 should be able to plot in about 256 gigabytes, not gigabytes, so it's even less than gigabytes. And will be about another 10 to 15% faster, such that it's hard to tell the difference between bitfield and no bitfield on almost everything. There's a lot. I don't want to say there's a lot. We already kind of picked up 30% of the 80% faster I think we can get. So it's not like we can go a whole lot faster than this. But there are also some trade-offs we can make, and obviously pausing and resuming is one of the things we want to get to. But as you're kind of tracking along, we're increasing the speed and the size, decreasing size of the plotter, such that we didn't want to focus on pause resume until we had it kind of stable and didn't think it was going to be able to improve a lot. That's coming soon, but obviously transactions first, pools second, Chia pause third. Let's see. And yet again, somebody asked when exchange, and I said specifically, we're not answering when exchange. Little color on why all the exchanges require NDAs. They don't always tell us what they're doing. We really can't tell you anything, and the things we can tell you, we don't know. So you're not going to get much information there. I can just say that I have a decent suspicion we'll be on some exchanges. Are you aware that people are using cloud storage for plotting? Yeah, and I wish them luck. There aren't good economics in cloud storage because the problem quickly gets to be that the cost of cloud storage sooner or later just buys you an underlying drive, and in fact, usually in about 3 months. I certainly think people might be trying to do price arbitrage, and it would not surprise me that there are some cloud infrastructures that could do short-term price arbitrage, but in any medium or long-term view, you're going to be paying for things you don't need, like redundancy and all of the stuff that, S3, Google, et cetera, try to give you. So we don't think it's economically viable. We think it is only, to the extent it ever is, it will be temporarily economically viable and that it will correct. The market's multi-sided here. Your profitability matters, and you're going to be up against people who own the storage or own storage they had on anyway. So that makes it kind of hard to compete with. Let's see. do a quick scan here. If any of the Chia folks want to raise their hand, happy to bring you on the panelist. Do-do-do. It's our favorite mushroom.
Hi, G.
Hi, Sai. How are you?
I'm fine. Sorry. I also have Zoom open on my iPhone, but somehow I raised the hand on my Mac, so video is not coming in.
I think I may be able to change that. Hang on. There we go. I think. Yeah.
You join? Okay, but wait, I have to. Yeah, no idea.
Yeah. Audio will work. We'll just missing your beautiful face. Sorry.
No problem.
Let's
So
see.
yeah,
Yeah, go ahead.
I saw some questions raised about exchanges again. People are eager to know where Chia will be launched. So there are several rumors.
Yeah, the thing is, as I said, that's the one thing I can't confirm nor deny.
Exactly.
Yep. Taking a question, Bill on mainnet launch day said that plots can be used for other projects. We are doing a lot of things to try to make it so plots are completely portable. We do think other projects will use proof of space and time. We are wide open to making that easier. And in fact, we have to make some product changes ourselves to support co-farming testnet more easily because we want our testnets to have some space that sorts of approaches what we actually have in the mainnet space, just to be able to make sure that what we're testing on testnet is a real test. Sai, do you have any questions?
If I have questions, no, but I'm willing to answer some if people have some questions. I'm also watching the Q&A, but I didn't see really open things.
So there seems to be a lot of questions that go along the lines that people think there's some sort of advantage to plotting the cloud. Nobody's thought about a 6-month ROI. Like, there's no way that plotting the cloud is going to be working for 6 months. Plus, lookup times, you may not be winning. You might be farming, but you may not be winning when you're trying to bring something back from the cloud. You're going to have a harvester right next to those plots to make that work. Longer term, I think we might see services pop up that will host it for you and give you remote harvester access to your own plots. That's definitely something that could exist. But again, the economics are going to be that they're paying the same price for storage that you are. So ultimately, there's no people think that there are economies of scale in buying power and buying disks. After you buy about 10 disks, the economies of scales are over. It's not like hell, even, well, certainly software. Software has huge economies of scale. But hardware, especially commodity hardware like this, everybody's buying the same. I do think we're starting to have a little bit of an impact on the supply chain. I think that'll be short term as the storage manufacturers realize that there's additional demand. But it doesn't surprise me that 10, 20, 30,000 people really excited about this project and trying to keep up with netspace are buying some hard drives.
Yeah, exactly. And I also think concerning the plotting in the cloud thing, people forget, okay, that there are tiers like $10, $20, $50, and we have huge plotting power, SSD space, and we can plot a lot of things in parallel, but they forget about the main thing, that's or store those plots in the cloud and have remote harvesters, or pay the egress rates, and those really ramp up really quick.
Really quick.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, look, I will give people the one hint that could possibly make cloud work a little better, and that is if you are willing to pay enough to have a rack in one of the peered data centers that peer to the various cloud providers, you might be able to skip the egress charge. But that's before you figure out what a rack costs you and what the data center rack costs are and all those other things. And you're quickly back to just farm in space that you own. You'll find that it's economically far better. Let's see. Somebody asked, Chia is open source. Does it become a problem if freelance developers find a way to plot faster and pay all that plotting software? Well, no, it's open source. Good luck with that. I will say that if that happens, it's going to make us really interested and put some of the best minds on our team on figuring out what they're up to. Plus, we could never ourselves buy that and profile it. We very explicitly are set out to make sure that the reference implementations are some of the best, if not the best. And also, we expect to, here soon, start getting back to doing some of the contests we used to do. So we'd much rather put, big dollars up against somebody trying to improve the plotter. And then that makes sure that those plotting improvements are open source. But also, there's some theoretical maximums here. Bram and team spent a lot of time figuring out exactly how small you could compress it, how, why, what the architectures were out there that could do things with it. So we're already getting close to kind of optimal plotter. And then at that point, it becomes much more about what trade-offs you choose. So there may be trade-offs that people choose, like minimizing RAM compared to what we sort of allocate, and using faster storage because that's a little bit less the usual use case. So there's things like that. And then the other thing we're going to be doing, though, obviously, is making this much easier to use. You shouldn't have to know anything. It should kind of like download and just do it in the background. And then, I've even been thinking about like, hey, Steven. Steven's a camera hog. I love it.
Yeah, Pet.
I've been thinking about like, it's the I'm a beginner, I'm advanced, I'm an expert, and you get a different plotter for each one of those choices. And the beginner is just like, how much free space do you want? And advanced is a little bit more like what you see today, and expert is most of the stuff you see today hiding in advanced. And, that's all you get. I think that's going to be a better way to go. Let's see. For folks in general on Keybase, yeah, I'm scanning that too. There's unfortunately 3 or 4 different windows that this all comes to. I am not currently able to look at the YouTube comment window, so please put it either in Zoom or in Keybase. Let's see. Is plotting on Windows still slower, and by how much? It is definitely still slower. The reason it's slower is some limitations in MSVC, the primary Microsoft compiler. Python requires the primary Microsoft compiler, so we're kind of stuck with it. We hope to be able to work around that because there are Microsoft related reasons, not fully technical related reasons we can't fix that. It is at least 10% and it might be more. We were trying to be nice to Windows by saying it was only 10%. Sai, you actually may have some data on this, right?
Sorry, I was reading a Q&A question, so I missed your...
Is plotting Windows slower?
Depends. I've noticed in Windows on slightly older architectures that it's quite a bit slower, yes. But for example, on last gen Ryzen, it's really fast considering the hardware. So I have 2 5600X plotters going, and they're doing 6-hour runs with 4 or 5 parallel K32s with only 32 gigabyte of RAM. So they're quite fast.
So storage, I think you had an add to the Windows question.
What's happening, guys? Happy Friday. I measured it. I actually had some data on my Windows machine from a single plot, my 5800X system with a Gen 4 NVMe. It was like 11% worse on Windows than it was native Linux. And WSL2 was actually worse than that, worse than Windows native, which was, I guess, not that surprising, but yeah.
Still a little. Let me bring Straya on. Hopefully his fan noise is down. Welcome, Straya. By the way, cheers, everybody. Happy Friday.
Cheers.
I need to go get a drink.
I know. I thought you were bringing a beer. Come on, you're killing me. There we go.
I'll be right back.
So, Matt, I know you said it before, but say it again. Talk about NFTs on Chia.
And Chiaexplorer does support NFTs. and we are going to have a reference NFT coming. What we're working on is the building blocks that NFTs are going to be built off of. Bram's come up with a really good idea for singletons, which will be things like DIDs, which I've talked about on my Chia YouTube channel. That will be part of the pool protocol as well, will be built off of that, and NFTs as well. So we're making sure we have a really good foundation before we get to the NFTs themselves. But yes, Chialisp does absolutely support NFTs.
Great. Let's see. Is the fastest Time Lord still run by an unknown party? Now that we have tested at real scale since the 19th, any indication that geolocation, the fastest Time Lord matters? There are... Let me back up. There's one known Time Lord, well, one Time Lord we're aware of that none of us have been able to beat. We believe it was a Rocket Lake pre-release CPU, and unfortunately the state of our Rocket Lake Time Lord is this. So I have been a little busy. Though Justin, who may be on, has got a couple as well, so hopefully we'll get that up and running shortly. At this exact second, we're running the number 2 Time Lord. It goes back and forth. There are 2 other people that I know in the community that are running Time Lords as well. The faster Time Lord is somebody who's doing a better job of overclocking their i9 than this lazy bleep is. And so they definitely take about, right now, 2/3 of the Time Lord slots. Both of those are North America. One was in Canada, or was it Australia? I get those 2 guys confused. They know who I'm talking about. But frankly, you know, we're not seeing any delay in people getting signage points around the world from those Time Lords. And ultimately, the number 1 or number 1, 2 are going to be the ones who send out all the signage points. Everybody else kind of falls behind. If you fall too far behind, you should switch and run a blue box. And it's worth talking about blue boxes for a second. So when the big Time Lords are out proving time for these blocks right now, they end up with a proof of time that's kind of large and unwieldy, but it's really quick to create. And that would mean that your database would grow really big and it'd be hard to validate. And so the blue boxes go back through the old proofs of time that have already been proven and reprove them with the slower resulting proof that's much more compact and much easier to validate when you're syncing the chain. So you're really doing everybody a favor, you know, adoption, your new sync, everything else when you're out there running a blue box. So, you know, that 2-year-old gaming computer you don't care about anymore, turn it into a blue box, you know, slap some Ubuntu on there and blue box like mad. Hey, Strya, can you talk about the plan for mobile wallets?
Mobile wallets.
I'm putting you on the spot for mobile wallets. Come on.
Just kidding. So I have a general idea of like what I want to use for a mobile wallet, and I can talk about that.
Please.
So it's going to be 2 out of 2 multi-sig, where one key is going to be used locally on the mobile device. The other key is remote on the server. When you initiate transaction, you would initiate transaction from the mobile. That transaction would go to the server, and then server, before signing that transaction, would require some kind of 2-factor auth in order to sign it. It wouldn't be a light client. It would get all the information from the server, because the light clients on mobile still have to do quite a lot of syncing. And if you want to use your app intermittently, you don't really want to wait for it to sync. But it has like all the security guarantees that you would expect out of your wallet.
Cool. There's a bunch of questions. We're going to go in no particularly smart order, but I'm going to use all y'all. Sorry. Storage JM, talk to us about thread scheduling, CPU thread allocation for plotting. It seems to be that you can set the number of plot times threads per plot equal to more than the number of threads in your CPU. Staggering certainly helps, but if plotting software, that question.
Yeah, I mean, hyper-threading can only go so far. I mean, if you like on a 6-core system, if you have 12 threads, you're not going to be able to scale linearly to 12 processes. And finding that sweet spot is somewhere in the, like, we answer this question a ton, which is like, why does the staggering help? And phase one is multi-threaded, so giving it more cores will make it go faster, but then the other phases aren't. And so the staggering helps just alleviate that and get better CPU utilization, better memory utilization. Phase 2 and 3 are super memory heavy, so it kind of balances it out. You can kind of cheat the system and get away with using less memory per process if you do the staggering thing. And then the temp space, you're not thrashing the hard drive all at once with a bunch of sequential writes at the end when the plots are done is a good thing. Ideally, you just want to scale linearly. If you have enough temp space and you have enough DRAM and you have enough cores, and you can just get all the cores to 100% CPU utilization, all the DRAM to 100% DRAM utilization, and all the temp space used, you're going to get the best plot times on that system. There's no better usage of hardware utilization. That's the goal of the staggering, is just to get hardware utilization up. So there's no secret recipe. You got to kind of tweak and tune until you get the right output on a system.
Cool. As I said, we're going to jump around a ton. One thing on an earlier topic, when we were talking about Windows, Kiwi Hatch points out that it's not always faster on this. You're not always faster on Ubuntu on the same hardware than Windows. Just depends a bit, especially at the newer hardware level. Okay, will rollups work in Chia? It's really funny that you asked me that, because I was on the phone with Dan Bonet literally before this talking about layer 2 and rollups. Bram and I very intentionally looked at each other and went, okay, we've done a bunch of research to make sure we have Chialisp in a place where it can support layer 2 really well. But there's a whole lot of development going on in layer 2, and we don't have enough time to finish this blockchain and pay attention to all of that. So we're going to finish a blockchain, and we're going to get Chialisp shipped. And then we're going to put our heads up and figure out what's the best stuff out there. And one of the things we're about to do will be, Bram is actually out getting his vaccine, which is why he's not on the call right now. And we're all really excited about being able to get tech meetups together again and get all of the people that we know and love in the Lightning community and in the Bitcoin Core community, and really kind of get a sense of what's looking best and most promising. Was literally kind of teasing Dan with the, hey, Dan, start thinking about Chialisp rollups. And he was like, oh, that's exciting. So yeah, there'll definitely be rollups. There's a lot of questions about, okay, who's building what on Chialisp? We've spent the last 3 years engaging with what I consider to be the enterprise class customers for blockchain. Our roadmap was both informed and, in fact, happily mirrored like what they were finding as well. So DID wallets, colored coins, and all their functionality. So, we think there's going to be, like I say in the white paper, a very barbell market for Chia. It's going to be banks and governments and financial infrastructure on one end, and it's going to be DeFi collectives and Uniswap and all of the really cool stuff that we know exists kind of from the cypherpunk ground up side. You should expect a Uniswap how-to blog post from Bram in another couple weeks. And we'll also be putting up a post about Taproot and Graftroot, but that's kind of a secondary issue compared to Uniswap. Uniswap's pretty freaking cool in colored coins. So, those are the generic things. I mean, for the same reasons I kind of can't talk about exchanges, you can imagine that when you're talking to the big boys, they do not want to be talked about until they're willing to be talked about. And so, our development process was informed by them. Matt, without naming names, do you remember that little interaction?
I do remember the interaction, yes. Big name.
I was telling Matt that a certain customer had certain requirements, and he thought I was using it hypothetically. And so I forwarded him the customer email, and he's like, oh, this is not hypothetical. So that's what's going to happen on Chia. And I've been saying this to a lot of people recently. There's an order of operations here. There's a reason we aren't promoting Chia yet. You can't buy it. We want the people who figured out the farm to be able to farm. And, it's getting harder, guys, but I think this will be the golden age of Chia farming. We couldn't go promote Chialisp yet because it wasn't ready. I didn't want people to go write Chialisp. And then in the last 6 weeks, we have completely restructured Chialisp. Nothing. We haven't done a lot to the logic of Chialisp, but how you write Chialisp and what number is what and what that command does have changed pretty radically in the last 6 weeks. So we didn't want a whole bunch of people kind of getting caught up in the middle of those changes. That all ends with the transaction fork. And so some of the customers I'm talking about are literally, earlier this week, oh, great, May, cool. We're going to start playing on testnet and mainnet in May, and we'll see what we can do. And so, we're just not in the hurry that all these projects are, right? This is a real project meant to scale up to global size to solve global problems. And so we wanted to do it Step one, you build a blockchain. Step two, you make sure that Chialisp is right. Step three is you build a developer community, and that's kind of the next thing you'll see us start to focus on. We, in building a blockchain, had to develop a farming community, and look, I have heard from multiple folks who aren't just us, who are so amazed at what kind of community we've built. A couple real Silicon Valley insiders have told me that they haven't felt buzz like this since like the Linux era of Red Hat and VA Linux. I can tell you that I see that everywhere, and it's just a testament to all y'all guys and gals. Like, thank you very, very much. So that was a really long way to answer that question, but I hope it gives a couple of different questions and answer there about like, what are we up to? Uniswap coming to Chialisp, exactly.
Yeah, Gene, it's funny to get the community magic. It's like all these people, I have a bunch of IMs and DMs in Keybase of like, I've never built a computer, but I'm going to do it for Chia. I'm just going to like barrel in and start building a desktop. And it's like, yeah, just do it. Watch YouTube, get online.
Totally. And like, look, Caleb, if he's around, we'd bring him on. Like, he's doing an amazing job. Keep it up. Right. Like, some of this too is, yes, there's a company, but no, we're not the whole story here in any way. Like, this is a decentral project. Like, Storage JM is carving out a niche of being the Chia influencer of like 2 or 3. Right.
Oh, man. You can tell by my first YouTube video that I'm not cut out for the influencer life.
I warn you that Wall Street knows who you are. Anyway.
Oh, the Nuck guy.
Yeah. Isn't he from Intel? Right. Let's see.
Yeah, well, someday I'll get video number 2 filmed when I'm not so busy.
There you go.
Building farms.
Yeah. Let's see. We answered that. Sorry, just running through the questions, folks. When can early block winners buy shares in Chia Network? I have to caveat with this is a hope and I cannot guarantee it, but it's a decently likely hope. We're probably going to go use an S1, a kind of classic style of an IPO. And if we do that, then we have the ability to control a certain allocation and can say, hey, people who won, from block 1 up to block X, and we'll have to think about what that number is, can get an allocation of stock. And it'd still be a little first come, first serve in the sense that I think a lot of people won't necessarily want to come forward and, KYC and do all the stuff you got to do to go buy stock. But we want to make sure that, there is room for folks and that they can do that. But because we might do things like a SPAC or other methods, we can't guarantee it, but we really want to do it. And it is something that's easy to do if we, use the right kind of doorway to go through. So. So when travel and gatherings can resume, can we get a group photo of all the team members together wearing farmer overalls, straw hats next to a Lamborghini tractor? So we were actually talking about going to Ohio and visiting a radish farmer. If anybody knows your memes, that's the honest work guy.
Hey, there's some AWS stuff in Ohio.
There you go.
Quit sneaking around.
The Nuck video was terrible, but I still watched the whole thing. Ha ha ha.
It was not good. Yeah. My wife was giving me a really hard time. She's like, what is this, like an unboxing video? What are you doing?
Question was, how many points do investors already have? It's answered in the business white paper. Pound biz at you. Sorry. What are the greatest challenges for Chia gaining traction in the coming months? The snarky answer is us not screwing something up. The real answer is, we're very serious about trying to build a real developer community. And it's going to take winning some hearts and minds to convince people to do that. Though we have this kind of unique secret weapon named Bram Cohen, which any developer worth his salt has to see what Bram's up to. And we think that once people take a look, it's going to be pretty darn compelling what you can do in Chialisp and how secure it is and how scalable it is and all those things. Matt, you should talk about the adventure from I know Solidity to being the Chialisp expert.
Yeah, so when I applied to work at Chia, I was coming from having developed Ethereum smart contracts and working on Chialisp. It was just a number of the headaches that if you've ever tried to develop in Solidity that you have to get around. You don't have those anymore. But for me, I think the trick is convincing other Ethereum developers that this is the case. And I personally want to make a guide for bringing Ethereum developers over to thinking about the UTXO model, which we have, because that seems to be one of the biggest stumbling blocks for people coming over. Is they see contracts as addressable entities that they communicate with, instead of smart contracts being code inside of coins. But if we can communicate that difference and the advantages of doing it this way, then that'll help a lot.
So I think there's a bunch of questions about, won't somebody be able to beat the plotting system? What if a quantum computer magically appears? What happens when DNA storage comes up? I was waiting for the wince. That was beautiful. Thank you, storage. Okay, so the concept behind proof of space won best paper at Eurocrypt. Eurocrypt may not be what most people think it is. It is the one of two premier cryptography paper conferences in the world. The math and the ingenuity behind the proof of space algorithm is very well understood and very, very, very hard to beat. The risks, the real risks to, for example, K32s would be that like storage and I are way wrong on how fast SSD flips, and there's maybe another accelerator behind that because Moore's law beats Kreider's law every day, and density does work pretty well for flash, but no, it's not going to be like, it might be that I'm wrong. It's not going to be 14 years. It'll be 9, but we're still talking about that kinds of ranges. And over that kinds of time, it's much easier to reason about, what these markets look like. And I mean, look, if a quantum computer exists, we aren't the only ones done. Bitcoin's over, right? So like if anybody thinks that's the risk, well, that's an existential risk to all cryptocurrency and all cryptography. The good news is there are some new cryptographic primitives that are quantum resistant, and there are ones that fit in all of the different kind of primitives we need. They're just really ungainly and slow and painful right now, but there's really good incentive to research on that, and I think we'll be going more deeply on that too. So there are things we can move over to. But the reason it's a K32, and I think it's important for people to understand this, is if you make the plot size too small, then you get close to a place where people can like grind out a plot in response to the challenge. Now, you only have like 30 seconds, and maybe you have like 5 minutes or 10 because you're in the same random window. There are some really advanced and esoteric conversations to be had about what the actual time measure is, and I expect to have a couple academic papers on them in the next couple years walking through them. But what we know now is that no matter how much money you want to spend, you might be able to get in the sub-hour range right now for a K32. You probably can, because theoretically you only need stage 1 complete, or phase 1 to be more clear, to farm, but no one's figured out how to farm a stage 1 yet. So that's got its own set of, unique challenges to it. So we're real comfortable that K32 is going to take a long time before you get there. And there's a little more safety. Like the hardware from an HA computing perspective you'd need to start getting into the sub 30-minute category on making these plots would make you so many plots in parallel, it's not really funny. I mean, we're talking 3 or 4 orders of magnitude more plots in parallel. So the economic analysis is, why try to chase a very elusive goal? Instead, become a 10% farmer. So that's the other piece of kind of protection that's built in. And it's designed to work this way. It's designed so that if we start seeing that over the horizon storage in the real future, we give people a couple year warning that it's time to go to K33. And the doublings here are big. Storage, can you talk about K33 versus K32 versus K34?
Yeah, I think people have a hard time thinking about exponentials, right? It's 2 to the K tables, or 2 to the K entries in each table. And so when you go to K equals 33, it's a little bit bigger than a K, it's a little bit bigger than 2x the K equals 32, and a K equals 34 is 4x bigger than a K equals 32, and so on. And so, yeah, it's exponentially harder to go create those. It just takes a scalable amount of time equal to the amount of data being created. And it's not like it's not like you get economies of scale, or it's better and easier to go create 1 k equals 33 versus 2 k equals 32. It's actually harder because you need more dedicated resources for a longer amount of time. There's more time for things to go wrong. Yeah, and Gene, to that point you were saying earlier about the hard, we have all these funny comments on Twitter about what if somebody invents this like something 10,000x better than what you have today. I've been in the storage industry for 12 years. The Seagate's public roadmap today states that they may, if all the stars align and they hit every single new technology that they have in the bucket, which is
maybe
heat-assisted magnetic recording, the bit pattern, everything that they have in the pipeline, and they execute on it perfectly, they might have 100 terabyte SSDs at the end of the decade, 2030.
Right.
That's if the stars align. And most likely that's not going to happen. I don't think that that's actually going to happen, but it takes a long time for this stuff to materialize.
Yep. And I want to pause a second. It's really late in Europe, so I know Matt needs to take off. Great seeing you. Thanks, man. Sleep well. Enjoy your Friday.
Bye,
Cheers,
everyone.
guys.
But yeah, so storage hits on the key issue. A better storage technology for Chia has something like $100 billion chasing it already before Chia got involved. Facebook, Google, Amazon, Internet Archive, like I can just keep going on all the people who would like, write a few times, read cheaply forever storage. Like, trust me, a lot of people want that. Facebook needs it so bad they'd like create silly things like or Blu-ray robots to try to get there. It was kind of funny. So to the extent that we cause that to happen, we're doing a like industry-wide good to create a class of storage everybody needs and wants and has never really gotten. So there aren't magic ponies to break the laws of physics just floating around, and everybody who kind of acts like there is, well, you're talking about a magic unicorn pony.
And you want to do your part. If you go buy a 16 or 18 terabyte hard drive today, it's not like that's magically going to be like obsolete in 3 years. There might be a 22 terabyte hard drive, and you're still going to have a very TCO and cost effective and power effective hard drive versus what orders of magnitude better than buying like a 4 or 8 terabyte hard drive. So that's my only advice to people buying hard drives I've given is just buy the biggest one possible. It might be slightly more expensive in dollar per terabyte, but it'll something you can run for a lot longer and not have to worry about as far as space savings and power saving and all that stuff. So,
yep. So here you get your win question, John Michael. Win 1 petabyte NVMe U3 drives.
That's some trolling right there.
I had to. Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah, I actually sent a picture to some guys that we're talking with for storage stuff. In 2018 at the Flash Memory Summit, it's like a geek fest for people in the storage industry. Nobody cares about it, but maybe after Chia, somebody will care about the Flash Memory Summit. But
I guess I'm going now.
Yeah, we demonstrated 1 petabyte and 1 U in 2018, and it still stands as the densest storage rack configuration ever built. So yeah, we're there. Somebody mentioned this 100 terabyte SSD for $40,000. I know the CEO of that company. Yeah, they haven't. I mean, I like them. They're super nice, but yeah, they don't sell a whole lot of those. It'd be nice if they did.
Yeah, the prices have come down.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see. Lots of quantum computing conversations that I apologize, but are I'm not nearly drunk enough for. Just clear. What's the transaction limit per second on Chia? We're aiming for about 20 TPS. That's a little more than double Bitcoin and more than Ethereum 1. It's also about double Fedwire's peak and about what quarter of Swift's kind of daily as well. There is a direct trade-off on TPS versus whether you can sync the blockchain. So you need to ask yourself how long you want to sync, and I'll tell you how many TPS we'll give you. We think that we're going to do rollups in layer 2 for things to settle like they do, because you don't settle your coffee bill on Fedwire, and you don't use Swift to, I don't know, even frankly trade equities. It's pretty funny. So, we think that the layer 1 is going to be where the layer 1 goes, and to be decentralized, your trade-off is TPS versus decentralization. And right now, decentralization really, really matters from a security perspective. It's back to the barbell point. Like, there are 2 types of transactions that are going to be interesting here. Really cheap ones because you're doing it layer 2 and you're doing other things to speed them up and you're doing DeFi with them and it's cool. And $1 trillion transactions. And $1 trillion transaction cares whether there's 10,000 nodes or 200 nodes. And I'm looking at certain blockchains in the top 3 with 200 nodes. Let's see. Stry, you see anything you want to answer?
I wasn't looking at the Q&A. Let me take a look.
Yeah. It's actually a really good question in Chialisp. I don't know if you want to take it or not about capabilities. It's too bad Matt popped off. And I understand if it's not comfortable.
I don't see that question. Where do I see
It's
that?
in the Chialisp channel on Keybase. So yeah, unfortunately, got to scan like 3 different things. Sorry. While you're looking, I'll answer one other one. Somebody asked, what do you think the biggest threats to the Chia community are right now? I always worry about keeping the tone we've set. We sometimes have people with bad attitudes come in, and I have yet to have to ban someone, but we've gotten close. We don't think we have to be anything but kind. We are okay with funny, but be funny. If you miss, delete it. So I really worry about keeping that tone. Like, we have some price talk. It's not a lot. I tolerate it until we have price, and I'm not going to allow much price talk after we have price. If anybody wants to talk about price, you can go look and you can go argue about it on Twitter. I do worry a bit that we are existentially threatening to other projects. I don't mean to be. We like these people. We work with these people, but their bag holders aren't them. And I expect their bag holders to be very, very nervous about what a successful Chia blockchain that uses less energy per unit of security and has superior features will mean to them. I'd ask y'all to try to keep it, again, kind and, bring it up a level. One of the things we're already seeing is people going, well, it's not green. And it's like, okay, let's not talk about that. Let's ask a simple question. Assume there's no free lunch. If our lunch was the same lunch, but it was 300 to 20,000 times cheaper, why are you buying the other lunch? That's the better argument with people. But it is also greener. You can't, again, have a free lunch. I mean, a Tesla is not free. It's just a hell of a lot better than the alternatives. So.
So the question about the Chialisp is a little bit weird. For people who are not in the channel, it says, I wonder, has anyone written or thought about the use of Chialisp contracts in implementing capabilities? As far as reading up about it, I don't think we have a write-up, but Bram a few times gave his definition of capabilities. And as far as I know, like pretty much most of our smart contracts so far actually use these features. So DAD, colored coin, rate limited wallet. I guess the real issue here is the lack of documentation that is gonna be improved.
Yeah, we everybody who's right person to write this documentation is trying to get it done right now. We're going to put a huge amount of effort behind fixing that. A question that was a follow-up on the green argument. Why not drop the green argument? Because the green argument matters. Like Bram put it well, like he doesn't own Bitcoin because he didn't want to be part of using that much electricity for that. Part of the reason that blockchains haven't been adopted by governments and banks is they can't take the image hit. I mean, even Elon took an image hit over this. I get why people think that in the crypto community it's not necessarily the right branding. I hear you, but we're also not really aiming to win the crypto community, even though I think we will. We're aiming to win the hearts and minds of everyone around the planet, and it's a lot bigger than the crypto community. And it means that this is an ESG investment. It's going to have good governance. It's going to have good energy use. We're going to do blockchains at 20,000 times cheaper per unit of security. That matters. Okay. Question from Twitter that I forgot about, and thank you for reminding me in Keybase. Vertical Gambit. What do I think about netspace? Is it ahead of what I think, behind, etc.? It is ahead of where I thought it would be. You know, you always underpromise and overdeliver, and we're over-delivering. It is a double-edged sword because, of course, I would love to see it easier for some of you smaller farmers right now, especially until we get pools out. We want to get pools out in May, worst case early June, but that's basically the timeline we think we can hit. But netspace is another type of double-edged sword, which is that, you know, it needs to be relatively large. It needs to be really hard for somebody to look up and go, I'm going to go try to 51% attack this. There's another question I'm going to kind of blend it in, which is kind of like, you know, what were the other storage-related coins netspaces? And some of you know this better than I, so please do correct me in one of the channels if I'm not exactly right. I believe that Burst got up to an apparent 2 or 3 exabytes. I believe about 50% of that was false because you could use proof of work to make your proof of space look bigger. So I think it was realistically a terabyte and a half. I believe Filecoin is at like 4 right now. Is that right, Straya?
That sounds about right.
Yeah.
The last time I checked, it was 2, but it was.
It's growing. Yeah. Now I think
growing.
Things are changing in real time right now. You know, we've certainly changed the burst growth, and so I think there's probably 4 or 5 exabytes that are kind of what are called easily addressable. There were people willing to, you know, put them on storage anyway. You know, I worry that the right answer for netspace is that we're at 4 exabytes in 90 days. That does also mean that we'll start putting some pressure on the channel, just because the channel is kind of not expecting a buying spree. Burst 1.2 exabytes, but realistically that and half that. Okay, so, you know, Kiwi, who should know, is talking a little less than one exabyte there. So, you know, it may only be that there's 4 exabytes addressable, but it's in that range. So it wouldn't surprise me. Currently 100 PIB. Wow. Thanks, Shanio. It would not surprise me that, you know, there's a bit of a harder stop around 4-ish exabytes, and then it gets into new places that storage come on. And somebody pointed out Sia's 3.3 PB. That's partially why I didn't mention it. It's not really on the radar. So I think we'll see us starting to soak up a lot of that storage, and I think we'll start bringing new storage. The thing that hasn't happened yet is that anybody right now who's plotting for Chia is doing it not economically. They're doing it because they believe in a future economics. And so in that sense, it's very truly economic. But what I'm getting at is there's a lot of businesses that have stranded storage that there's no way they'd look at it now because there's no price for them to do an analysis to figure out whether it's worth the IT guy's time to go plot. I think that's going to change. And I think when that happens, you're going to start seeing a much broader base of stranded storage be, you know, a petabyte here, a petabyte there, 4 petabytes here, you know, half a petabyte. I think that's going to really start to even further decentralize what you see out there. And the thing that I'm very happy about is the kind of total, you know, unique keys with Chia. That really shows me that, you know, there are a lot of farmers getting rewards. Let's see. Will Chia ever launch their own decentralized exchange? Kinda. So, Straya? What? Chia.exchange, yeah. There will be Chia decentralized exchanges. Whether Chia Network launches it necessarily, not clear, but yes, we're going to have DEX. And I expect we'll have multiple DEXs, and I think some of those DEXs are going to be blow people's minds. It's not just crypto anymore. So yes, but hold on for future events. A question we get a lot, so it's nice to answer. What'll happen if you have 10 nodes with the same plot? What'll happen if you win? Well, you'll put 10 of the exact same proofs of space in the network, and the Time Lord will grab 1, improve time on it, and you'll win 1. So you will have wasted 900 gigabyte spaces. That's all will happen.
Yeah, don't do that, please.
Don't do that.
Yeah.
We're trying to be green here, kids.
Yeah.
It's a rough map of nodes. There used to be. Freddie took it down because I'm sure it pain in the derriere. Our top country was the United States, followed closely by China and Germany. The Hof is big in Germany. Wait, sorry.
I think the Germany was the second one, actually.
Yeah, and China was catching up. It would not surprise me if China is now. People are asking about, will we have a website in China? What's our China strategy? We are actively pursuing who we'd like to work with there to be a little bit better plugged into what's going on. It's huge there. There are scams running around in China that are not us. If people are selling you Chia network, they are not selling you something that's true. They, do your diligence. There are definitely real pools. There are some real things going on in China where people are putting money together to buy hard drives and pool up and compete. And that's, everyone can farm, right? But if somebody thinks that they're getting Chia equity or Chia coins directly, you're being lied to. Storage JM. It appears the network is growing at 3 to 4% daily. Do you think it'll begin to plateau to 1 to 2% of a certain size? And what size do you think that'll be?
Yeah, Gene is laughing. I actually wrote a very, very poor script this morning to grab the netspace every day.
We were talking about this today.
Yeah, and 3.2% CAGR is what I calculated over the last 21 days for growth rate. No, it cannot. If it continues to grow at that rate, we'll be over the entire storage supply for over a zettabyte in like a year. So at some point, I have talked to Gene about this, which is, we know how big the hard drive market is. It's 1.2 zettabytes per year in 2021 is how big the hard drive market is. We know that the cloud guys buy the overwhelming majority of that capacity, and they're all buying the big hard drives. So, the stuff that's left is not all the big ones. And then, so once we hit to like 1% of the total hard drive capacity, which again, it's 1.2 zettabytes, you just take 1% of that, 12 exabytes. Yeah, I mean, that's going to drastically, change the hard drive economics if we get to that. And if that happens in, with 3.2% daily growth, that'll happen in like, 4 months from now, 5 months from now, something like that. Yeah, I mean, it'll be big. The growth will be fast, but to that point where it's affecting hard drive prices, there's elasticity in the market. Like supply and demand can't just infinitely go on for some growth. And at some point, there will be a price in the Chia coin, and there'll be a market for it, and people will be able to do the calculations on I buy X amount of storage and I earn X amount of Chia, per day based on my investment, and they'll be able to, if the hard drive prices go up, that changes that equation. So no, long term, I don't, I think that they'll figure it out, but in the short term, there's always, impacts of supply and demand. Just look at every other market.
So Efficient says that he thinks we're hitting 12 exabytes in July. I think that is the new biggest guess ever.
Man, yeah, I hope not. I just being a guy who runs a farm, I really hope it's not 12 exabytes in July, Yeah. But, that would all mean that, Chia is very successful and completely decentralized and taking up, a large percentage of the hard drive capacity that's out there in the world.
Also, look, there's a tipping point, and neither Storage nor I have had enough time to like dig in to think about where that is, but it's something we'll probably do, because at some point, like your ability to parallelize creating the plots versus being able to acquire the storage flips, and the storage becomes a severe limiter on what you can plot. And right now you don't see it that way because everybody sees just a plotting race against time with everybody plotting. But that flips, and it flips before we hit 12 exabytes, way before.
Right. That's the thing I'm trying to reiterate to people that are looking at the long-term thing. Like if you buy really big hard drives and set up a very efficient farm, it's not like it's going to be unprofitable in 2 to 3 years from now, because, basically the economics of the entire Chia chain, it's the same as blockchain with like Bitcoin, right? If somehow Bitcoin mining becomes unprofitable, they turn off the machines. Now, right now, every machine that's been built between 2014 and now is mining Bitcoin. And so, if you're only 10% or 20% off the most efficient hard drive storage in the world, you're not going to have to magically turn off your farm if there's 12 exabytes. You'll just win slightly less, or you'll be in a pool and you win a distributed amount based off what you have. And the coin will be worth a whole lot more, so you'll be super happy.
Right.
Yeah. So.
Yep. One question that's somewhat related. Hi, Freddie. This is Freddie Coleman, Chiaexplorer. Here we go.
Hello, everybody.
Welcome, Freddie.
So I'm going to answer a question that might sound bad about Freddie, and I want to stop and say that this is the most annoying thing he has to do, and it's not his fault. So one of the questions is there something y'all can do if the node count falls too low? We're not going to do anything about the node count falling too low. It will find its natural height. But what I can tell you is that it may be, I'm suspicious that for some reason we're not counting nodes correctly, us helping Freddie doing it too, because the total traffic to the introducer has doubled twice in the last 36 hours. So there's kind of no mathematical way that the node count has gone the direction it has with that much introducer query. Long story about introducer and how we need to get rid of it, and we'll be shortly for doing what Bitcoin does with DNS. But right now it's a central service, so we can kind of see the traffic. And I can tell you, there are a lot of nodes out there.
I can say that at least going by the traffic to Chiaexplorer, it doesn't add up. The node count appears to be going down. The traffic to Chiaexplorer pretty much went up 1,000% when mainnet launched, and it's already almost doubled that on a daily basis. It never went down. It's still like going up every day.
That's me refreshing the pool.
Well, yeah, look, there's not a stat other than node count that's not up and to the right. And some of them, like I pulled some of the Reddit stats, and I've been kidding venture capitalists that, you know, if you saw these on Silicon Valley HBO, you wouldn't laugh because they're not believable. But those are our stats. Okay. So Freddie, introduce yourself to the level you'd like to. Like, not a lot of people have gotten to know you other than just, you know, online. So.
Sure. I'm Freddie. I created Chiaexplorer. I guess part of my motivation for that is, so I was into Bitcoin fairly early in 2011. And I saw all the projects that kind of came out of Bitcoin in their early stages, before there were exchanges, before there were decent wallets. I kind of saw what that was like. And so I was excited by Chia, the project, and I felt like I could create something myself. And I know that it's not going to be perfect. It's not going to be the finished product, but I can create something, MVP, release it, and improve it over time. And that's kind of what I'm doing. Seems to be going pretty well so far, getting quite a lot of traffic. So yeah, it's pretty good.
Yeah,
Freddie's our first official trademark owner or licensee, and Storage and his buddies are going to be the next. I just need to get around to them. Anyway, go ahead, Sai.
Yeah, Freddie, props, because the traffic proves that your work is really well, and we all use Chiaexplorer to have our daily graphs and see our progress in farming. So big props.
Not spy on the other whales and speculate about the growing message. That would never.
I want to thank everybody for using the site, and I know it's not perfect, and there's, like, for me, I can see everything that's wrong with it like all the time, so I'm always trying to improve it. But we've just started a new logo, and I've got a new design being built now, and I'm going to make it work better on mobile and things like that. So there's a lot of stuff coming in the future to look forward to. Thanks,
man. Your part of the community is very much appreciated. Oh, let's see. When pooling, we have to replot. I don't like that. When pooling, your new plots will be plotted to the pool. Like, let's be very clear what's actually going to happen. You could choose to replot to a pool, but I think that's actually a bad economic decision. But everyone's going to make their own call on that. I'm still torn. I may not go to a pool. I'm pretty happy to put my little farm in the corner and let it earn over time. Let's see. Thanks for not having ads on Chiaexplorer. I don't think Freddie will guarantee you that will remain the same. Let's see. Someone asks, hey, is there a complete idiot's guide to setting up and going with Chia? Not really. Caleb Curry is starting to do decent work on this. Storage JM has done some stuff here, John Michael. But there's real opportunity for people to kind of make these explainers. Honestly, folks, like there's 21 of us, and we're working real freaking hard. Like, I'm sad that we have not had a chance to do some of those YouTube explainers, but it's real open territory for folks to take and go help the community and build, additional community, right? So a real opportunity for folks. Go ahead.
Yeah, and I know we're even a lot of questions like, okay, how do I know that I'm plotting? Like, how do I know that I'm farming correctly? Like, okay, I've got like a hard drive filled up. Like, okay, I want to make sure that it's actually doing something or farming. Those are valid questions, and I know that there's some people that probably we need to create a little bit more content to make it easier to figure that stuff out. And yeah, I maybe went on the guides, I recommend Ubuntu server, but I know a lot of people that are just like, okay, I'm not comfortable with the CLI. It's like, they just install Windows, install Ubuntu desktop. That's totally fine. Like a lot of there's no shame in that. they got a nice GUI that works.
One of my favorite tech tips, if you're first time to Ubuntu, if you install Ubuntu server and you don't install Ubuntu server, or pardon me, desktop, the GUI will not work. Linux is a little weird. You have to actually implicitly install a GUI for anything to run as a GUI on Linux. Key piece of advice for Linux users. I have 2 questions floating around that I need to answer. What's an introducer? Okay. A lot of people have no idea about this component of Bitcoin. So the first time you ever start Bitcoin Core, it actually goes and does a bunch of DNS lookups to try to find good nodes. And there are these special DNS servers that are coded into the Bitcoin Core code that will respond not with a name resolution, but instead with a peer resolution. So it'll give you a peer and a high quality peer, and you'll know that peer is well connected. And so that's how you get your initial list of peers. Once you do that, then each peer gossips this information as well. So it says, hey, these are my great peers. You might think about connecting to them. We do the second part already, and we were hoping to do the first part already, but New Consensus took a lot of resources away, and our timelord expert is also our peer gossiping expert. So he was a little busy on New Consensus. We are very close to shipping our DNS introducer, but our current introducer is kind of a dumb web thing that you basically connect to a machine we run, and it takes a poll of all the people who connected to it, makes sure that it can connect to them, and then hands those IPs out to you to get your first IPs. We had that running on a T3 small, and I looked at it, and it was pegged. And so now we have it running on a bunch of C5 larges, and by this morning, it was heading to pegging that. So it's now round robining between Virginia, Oregon, and Singapore. And if we get close to the edge, we'll add London. That's all simply to buy time to ship the DNS version. And we're going to be reaching out to some of you in the community to run those DNS servers. We want everybody to have these DNS servers pretty broadly available. Storage, tell them why you're laughing.
No, I'm glad these guys in the chat here, Shanio causing trouble with Sai in the chat.
Everybody has to know that Shanio is kind of our mascot. Like, not all the rules apply evenly to Shanio, just saying. But so the connections to that thing that's asking for new peers, and every once in a while you will ask it for new peers even as an existing node, have doubled again over 36 hours. And we were worried about literally hitting a wall of what we could provide in AWS, because with that kind of net traffic, we can't even really go to raw iron that we own because we don't really have those kinds of links ready for that. And the whole point of being a peer-to-peer infrastructure is that we're not supposed to. So like, we're really happy to get out in front of this. But thanks to Justin, who also made sure that we did not hit this wall. And it's growing really, really, really fast. Anyway. Coin Breakthrough is a YouTuber who has some great video guides on Chia farming. So we'll promote that.
Yeah, that's Caleb.
Oh, is that Caleb? Okay, sorry. I think it was Caleb. Sorry. Yeah, Caleb posted another one that I haven't seen yet, either this morning or yesterday or both. Anyway, so I'm a little behind. Let's see.
It appears somebody did not follow my number one Intel SSD advice, which was update the firmware the second you get the drive. There's 2.5 years of validation they spend hardening that firmware with millions of drives with tons of customers, and firmware updates on SSDs very, very good. Do them. Yeah, they make them very, very stable and good and happy.
We're very lucky to have a professional in firmware updates for SSD available in the community on Plotting Hardware.
Yeah, I just don't want anybody with brick drives, so I'm trying to help everybody out there.
I will tell those of you who've only come to the project in the last 4 to 6 weeks that it used to be beautiful. You could go on eBay every day and get a great like Intel data center used drive, and those days are now over.
Yeah, we're not there with hard drives yet.
Is there a cap on how much Chia will be farmed similar to Bitcoin? No, but it's similar to Bitcoin. The business white paper, starting on page 15, explains all of this. We are going to have ongoing emissions, but they are very small after about 20 years. So you can always calculate exactly how many coins exist at any given moment. But the point behind that is there are some pretty gnarly attacks when you only have fees and not farming rewards in a blockchain. And we link to some of those research studies in the business white paper, so you can see why we made that choice. Freddie, do you have any questions?
Yeah, I've got a question. So are there any plans for hackathons and other kind of Chialisp related events, and also just conferences and other kind of events in general?
So we'd already had conferences, but for this little thing. So now that little thing is starting to wind down. Yes. And also, we didn't really go to the hackathon set yet because we wanted to get everything settled. I mean, I wish to personally apologize to you about how many freaking releases we broke everything on you. So with that out of the way, I didn't want that to be the general experience, right? But now that we're just about to go gold on Chialisp with the fork of transactions in, it's much better time to start getting people out there, learning the, universal forward compatible Chialisp, right? We are about to invest a large amount of dirty fiat into a whole lot of pizza and beer around the globe. And we will also be leaning on a lot of the people who we trust in the community to be like a local organizer, and we'll fly in and we'll get a venue and we'll serve pizza and beer, and Bram will talk tech, and we will do interesting stuff with people all over the globe.
I will deliver Gina
Sounds
pizza
awesome.
for 10,000 Chia.
Chia.pizza is a thing.
Yeah, so Gene, I have a question for you. So
Sure.
when 1.1 drops and transactions start, what happens if a bunch of people just like don't understand and just forget or keep doing 1.0 or 1.03, or, is it going to cause weird things in the, the peers connections if people don't upgrade right away? Or
So it won't cause problems in the peers, but it will truly screw the guys that continue running it. Basically, their transaction engine will think everything's wrong, and they probably won't get their farming rewards included. Okay. 1.04 has really big gains in the plotter, and we would never be holding it back to put in really nasty warning messages so that when people are incented to download 1.04 with the new plotter, that they will start getting warnings, and we will throw up a sign that says, this is not farming, you need to switch. So yeah, we're trying to make that as painless as possible. It would not surprise me if on the actual hard day we lose like 5-10% of space until people figure it out, right? But I think it's going to be in that order of magnitude, nothing more.
yes, very good with the 1.04 plotting improvements. It's like the temporary storage space is now a power of 2, which is, what SSDs come in.
Yep,
56 gig, 512 gig, 1 terabyte. It's very, very, very efficient versus what we had before.
Yeah, it's not, we may still be able to make it smaller on a temp space basis, but that gets a little bit more esoteric and might require some trade-offs. And, one of the things we kind of think about is that I think the plotter is ultimately going to have trade-off settings where you can go, hey, I'm tight on temp space, but I'm willing to go a little slower to get one more on the temp space, right? So we'd like to get there at some point soon. A lot of people are chomping at the bit internally to get back to ChiaPOS. Like, it's a fun challenge because it's a really hard challenge. But we've got to get transactions and pooling out. Just, transactions and pooling. Transactions.
That seems important.
Little. Look, I do think that some of the time preferences around pooling are overplayed. Like, people are like, oh my God, I'm not winning today. What's the problem? If you got a Bitcoin every month, would you be happy? But I do get it. There's a lot of people for which it'd be a lot more fun that I got, 1,000 mojos a day. Totally understand. And so we're going to get you there. And we're going to get you there in a way. There's a lot of worries that it really hits decentralization, but it actually doesn't if people implement the pooling protocols we're going to offer, because the farmer still makes the important decisions and still is incented to kind of behave in a way that makes the pool still very functional, and everybody should be happy with how the pooling protocol works. So we're modeled after one of the Bitcoin core developers' really good idea, and I'm trying to remember who that was, and I apologize to him for forgetting it right in a second. I blame the Manhattan. Okay. I heard there's 4,608 things per day. Why are there more than that on Chiaexplorer? Don't worry, Freddie, I got this. There are 2 Chia per block. So right now it is 4,608 times 2 per day Chia for the next 3 years. After that, it'll be 4,608 Chia per day, but not until year 4. Pardon.
Also, currently the chain is running a little bit faster because of the increase in the space, and that is getting readjusted every day. So instead of like 4,000 something blocks per day, we are getting almost like 5,000.
Yeah, we're running about, it takes about 92% of the time that it should take per day to complete a day. So about 8% faster than we should be. That's somewhat expected, and it actually will slow down when we hit that flippening point that we were talking about earlier about plotting versus storage. So the growth rate of new storage per day, new plots per day will slow, and that will then pull us closer to the 4,608 blocks per 24-hour ideal.
Yeah, you guys are very happy that you did the 1-day difficulty reset, not 2 weeks. That would be a nightmare.
Yeah, look, that was the closest we came to a like serious oops, right?
Yeah.
It was the one constant we hadn't thought about much after doing all of the work on new consensus, and we were like, hey, wait a minute. But that actually came very much out of us looking closely at initial difficulty. We spent a lot of time and effort trying to figure out what the heck initial difficulty should be, and pretty proud of Straya and Mariano, who really nailed the 100 petabyte number, and we were off by 10. And in that situation, that was great. And that first day was as boring as I hoped it would be. Our one mistake was I looked up the clock and it was 7:00:05 when I started the chain.
It was not a boring day for the rest of us, Gene.
It was not a boring day for us either, gentlemen. Like,
yeah, it took me 30 minutes to win the first block, and I was sweating bullets, just checking out every log 100 times.
So I want to tell everyone who's like, I haven't won a Chia, why not? Everybody here has said that to us. And then you win the Chia and you're like, oh, okay, it works.
So when the mainnet launched, I had my laptop with me, and then I had harsers and like remote setup all set up nicely, and I was like waiting for mainnet to launch, and then maybe like 20 minutes before the mainnet, my laptop battery just died. So I took my iPhone and joined the call on Zoom, and just looked up like a few hours later if everything was running, and I was like so happy when I discovered that everything started up fine.
Too much of those crypto parties in Miami, Straya.
Oh, we're just beginning on that one. I'm just saying. One thing for everybody in the community, a lot of us will be at Bitcoin. I don't know what they're calling it, but it's June 4, 5, 6, I believe. So most of the Chia team will be in Miami June 4, 5, 6, and happy to see y'all there. It'll be a hell of a show, and it's gonna be like the first Bitcoin event on the planet since the pandemic, so it may rip.
Oh, we should totally reserve a venue and have a Chia week.
Well, we're certainly going to have a Chia night. Like some poor bar is going to have to put up with all of us. I'm just saying. So definitely happening. I'll try to get that more publicized sooner than later, but we'll see. But keep that in mind, everyone. We're very happy to host anybody who can get to Miami and buy you some drinks.
All right, Gene, I got to go grill Straya, Freddie.
Yep. We'll do about 15 minutes more and we'll call it a night. Freddie, you're way late. Do not feel any obligation to stay.
All right, bye, guys.
See you, John Michael. Thank you. Let's see. I did have a couple questions I wanted to answer. There's a question that's kind of about can you like auto figure out the computer for plotting? Yes and no. So we do actually expect longer term that the like truly beginner's version of Chia plotting will kind of poll your machine, figure out what's going on, and like choose the right temp directory and choose the right final directory and just kind of go do it for you between 11 p.m. and 7 a.m. But it's never going to be as optimal as you kind of understanding your hardware and figuring it out. But we're going to go a lot further on that. And one of the things we're going to be doing is I expect to kind of double the dev team and spend a lot more time on very platform specific development, which we haven't really been able to do. We've been very focused on being very cross-platform, but that means that we have not been able to dive deep on each of those platforms. And so that's kind of the next thing to do, is to make those deep dives and those additional libraries so that it's even better in Windows, it's even better on the Mac, it's even better in Ubuntu. Someone asked about pi plotting. One of our senior advisors, our guy who handles Switzerland for us, he plots on the Pi. He's got a couple of RPi 4s, and he doesn't care how long it takes, and he just plots away, and he's doing pretty well with those. But they're slow. You need to be realistic about how fast a Pi can plot. It's not very fast. Free drinks on Gene. No, it's free drinks on Gene, Bram, and the investors. Be very, very clear about whose money we're spending. But yeah, we will throw a party in Miami for Chia and Chia supporters, so we'll figure that out. Let's see. Just running through the various channels here, folks. Don't want to miss too many questions. Talked about introducers. Somebody asked about what's in it for me to run a Time Lord fast. The answer is nothing's in it for you to run a Time Lord fast. Well, not nothing. If you're a big farmer, big pool, there are some backup reasons to run a Time Lord. If we had a net split or there are other serious network traffic problems out on the major internet, you might be able to continue to win block rewards until the network heals and the not refork, but the reorg occurs. So you might be able to win in the reorg by building a bigger chain with that Time Lord while you're disconnected effectively. But there's a general service of a few Time Lords out there means that if like power goes down in the entire west coast of the United States, there's still Time Lords somewhere else, and we're gonna have a few around the world that we run too. So it's not like everybody has to do this, but for those of you who have interesting machines, that's going to be useful. In the medium term, it's going to be the number one Time Lord's likely to be 3 Rocket Lake machines, because you're going to run VDF on each one of the 3. There's 3 VDFs that are required to advance the chain. And that's because the dual IFMA processors in Rocket Lake can really only run 1 VDF at the speed that they want to run at. And they may not overclock very well running the IFMA stuff. But if you run all 3 of those, you'll go real quick. We'll put a few of those out. The medium to long-term goal, though, is we're going to start an open source ASIC project for Time Lords. And we want to we'll certainly probably start at 28 nanometers, but we'd like to go much smaller on the die processes. And our goal, it's not economical, but it's important, is to have a USB 3 device that has 3 VDF ASICs in it, a power brick, and a bunch of fans, and you can plug that into a Pi and be the fastest Time Lord in the world for $250 off our website. So that's where we're headed. But it takes a little time and a little effort to do some of the fab work, to run some of the test versions, and get those out in the hands of everybody. So that's the answer to Kiwi's question about when ASIC. Where can I find a high-level overview of the plotting algorithm? Unfortunately, there's not really a high level. There's the full, deep details in the Chia proof of space implementation document. You can find that in the Chia POS repository or on the FAQ in I think question 2 or 3 on the wiki. The first parts of it are definitely difficult for mere mortals to read, but the last third is more about the implementation, and it's not that inaccessible. I would suggest scan through about 60% of it and then get to the meat that will kind of give you an overview of the various plotting processes. The code's obviously open source, but it is not super simple. It's a relatively difficult set of things, and somebody posted that as Chia.NET Assets Proof of Space PDF. I think that's actually Straya, the old one. There's a 1.1 version linked from the, that was the pre-beta 8 one right there. If you look in Chia POS on README or in the wiki FAQ.
I saw Numus also asked, do you recommend a NAS system to scale out the farm? If not, what is the best way to scale out the farm? So if it comes to just storing your finalized plots, there are coming or already are Docker containers that run on NASes where you can run a farmer on. So of course you can run all your stores from NASes and have several NASes. Other members are using just Raspberry Pis with USB. How do you call it? I lost the words.
Expansion point.
Yeah, exactly. With multiple disks on, and those run harvester instances just fine to a general or a unified farmer. So yeah, you can use NASes, but it's not the end-all solution. You can also use JBots, use different PCs with USB expansion, etc. So it's what you have at hand. That's the real solution. Repurpose what you have.
Yeah. And we're going to be making Docker and other kind of images available in the Synology App Store. We just have not had the time to get those complete. We're making it at least so you can kind of do that the DIY way for now. When Chia schwag, can I make it without your permission? Let me answer the second part first. As long as it's not commercial, make as much Chia swag for yourself and friends as you want. If it's commercial, we're going to figure out how to let people print Chia swag. We only care that it doesn't suck and that you, like, I don't know, maybe get a bucket t-shirt. We'll figure that out. Maybe not even that. Anyway, we are going to try to get some Chia swag. We're just, priorities aren't necessarily there just yet. We just want to make sure that, like, as a guy who's been in technology forever, I hate bad corporate swag. I want the swag to actually be a t-shirt or a jacket or something that you would wear anyway. And then it's swag. So we're going to make sure that we put a little bit of quality control in that and then make that a scalable process so that, like, you actually get your swag in a couple days and not 2-3 weeks. So yeah, we'll get the swag. We promise. We know. There has been swag before. There will be swag again. Let's see. Can you explain UPnP? Sai! Explain UPnP.
Yeah, it's really difficult. So UPnP is a service or some kind of higher level thing where you can task the router to open ports and allow services back in. And I don't really am a personal opponent of that feature because I disable it on purpose on all devices I have. I decide what comes in and what goes out.
Yeah, so the UPnP issue is real. If you're behind a router that you have UPnP enabled on, and you turn on 2 nodes without disabling UPnP on the nodes, basically the router gets confused, and so the traffic that, like,
exactly.
node 1 asks for goes to node 2, and node 2 is like, I didn't ask for this. And so node 1 doesn't get the reply, and node 2 gets replies it didn't ask for, and it doesn't get the replies it asked for. So you can't stay in sync. So it's a real issue. You can safely turn UPnP off, but it's important for the network that enough people be accessible from outside because, that time when you're trying to get new peers, well, the more people that turn UPnP off or don't set up port forwarding for 8444, the harder it is for you to get new peers for you to connect and get online. And so, you kind of want to be there for people who want to do that. And Sai, do you still have your well-known URL for that?
Yeah, I have Saves.com. That's a peer of mine that is public, which has an open port and it's always available.
Somebody asked, will the GUI reflect the UPnP issue? And the answer is we can't tell. There's no way for us to know what your router did, and it's up to your router to do this right, and most routers don't do it right. Sorry. This is a problem for...
Actually, you can. When you look in the peer list, you can see the ones that properly forwarded port 84444 show like 8444/8444 in connection list, and the other ones have random UDP ports as first, and then the 444 as connection. So when I look at 60 or 70 connected peers on my nodes, on my main nodes, most of them still have not proper port forward. So that's an issue.
Well, so it is correct that you can have UPnP actually move the traffic to a different port, and that will work. The problem is that our software can't tell when that's going on about your node. That was the question.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep. Yes, the question on IPv6, do I have to disable UPnP? Generally, no. IPv6 under the UPnP library we're using will generally pinhole correctly. It tends to just work. So IPv6 is better in that way.
Only thing on IPv6 is if you have a firewall and you have, for example, a /48 or something like that from your provider, you have to explicitly open firewall ports for port 8444 to your IPv6 addresses of the nodes.
Relating to an earlier thing we were talking about the kind of more beginner's guide overview to plotting, one of our questioners points out that the beginner's guide on the repo wiki now has a section for how plots are created that apparently is a better overview. And guys and gals, that's a wiki. Please, you find something wrong, change it. If you're worried you're not right on the change, there you can DM me that change. I will take a look and make sure you're okay. But that's the whole idea behind the wiki, is that, you know, to the extent you need to get information and knowledge out there that helps everybody, that's extremely valuable. So please and thank you. Someone paid me a very kind compliment about being well known in the crypto space, and then asked me a far more important question. Can you explain what you're most excited for Chia to achieve and solve in the next 3 to 5 years? I think in the 3 to 5 year time horizon, our goal is to make it clear that blockchains really are an adult technology that's going to change the world. I don't think we'll get done with the change in the world in any way in those 5 years, but I think we can get to a place where people understand that, like, poor folks shouldn't have check bounce fees, and it shouldn't be the only way that they get money is payday lending, and people shouldn't pay Western Union rates, and stocks should settle in an hour or two instead of a couple days, GameStop. These are actually like really important things that are just crappy to people, and we want to fix them. And we're not going to be able to fix them all, and it's going to take some time to fix them all. But we want to be making it so clear that that's the path we're all on. That's what I think we can do in 3 to 5 years. And I think we've got the team and the community and the technology and the backgrounds and the expertise and the various expertise. You know, Mitch, I've done a whole bunch of weird stuff, and we're about to go out. And like, one of the things that's great about this project, I was telling someone else, we can kind of like choose who we'd like to recruit, and there aren't many jobs we can't take them out of, including governments, because this is just such a important and large endeavor that it's hard to say no to really changing how the world works in a way that's going to be so beneficial for so many people. So that's probably modeling it in too much, but it's the truth. So 3 to 5 years. Let's take the last couple questions and wrap up for this Friday evening. Let's see, the usual rants about price in general. Okay, a much more tactical question. Is it better to have a dedicated farmer with all the hard drives that run separate machines that plot and farm? I personally like to keep my plotters away from my farmers, just because plotting can use and should use a tremendous amount of the resources on your machine, and that tends to get in the way of farming. So I like having really lame, old, or low power farmers attached to a lot of drives that are farming, and I'm slowly copying over the plots that are getting done by the machines that are being pushed to the wall. But the whole point behind Remote Harvester is that you kind of get to choose, like, you can have a, low power node and then have a low power harvester. Or you can have a medium power node and then a bunch of harvesters on low power or high power. It doesn't matter. Like, I'm in a spot, in fact, this weekend that I'm probably going to switch, and one of my plotters is going to farm some of my plots because my low power plotter is full, low power farmer is full, but I want to finish filling this drive and attach it to that while having two machines plot to this. So you can mix and match. There's no right answer. What I would tell you, though, is you should have one node. Go ahead, Sai.
Yeah. Exactly. In my setup, I have one main node, which is also the farmer, and I have one main remote harvester, which has the large bulk of the disks, but the plotters, which also have some storage locally, are also remote harvesters to the farmer. So when the plots are finished, they are immediately farming. So that's a wise decision, and afterwards you can quickly disconnect the drive, connect it to your main harvester, and continue that way. So there's no good way to doing it. You have to adapt it to your own setup and what you have.
Yep. There's a final question I think we're going to take, and it's why the corporate structure. Tell us more about that. First of all, I'll first say I spent 32 pages trying to explain that in the white paper, so I would recommend that you read that. But higher level, when we looked at this space and we looked at blockchains and we thought about what blockchains need to do, they need to ultimately thread through the regulatory, the social, the political, and do that in a way that had the right kinds of support for these kinds of huge technological changes. One of the conversations I have with people is they're like, well, look, blockchain X only needs $20 million a year to run. Like, why do you think you need all this other? And I'm like, I'm not creating in this case, the Monero ecosystem. We want to create the Linux ecosystem. Like, we want to change how not just technology, but financial technology and finance in general works. Like, all banks, all stock exchanges, all bond exchanges, all international transfers. This is not a small undertaking. And what's great about a joint stock corporation, good old-fashioned C Corp, is everybody knows how it works now. We've had 400 years of experience with companies. And we have really well-researched, part of the ESG movement is, the governance side of what's the best governance. So, we're moving quickly to an all-outside board that is elected annually. Every director stands, including the insiders. We're going to have it so that there's no one who has concentration beyond Bram's founder stake, and even that isn't a controlling interest. And it allows us as a big public company to be in some ways one of the most Switzerland-like entities possible. As a big public company whose job is to increase shareholder value by increasing the value of the price of XCH, as well as the value of our lending business and the value of our Red Hat style software and support business, everybody knows what our motives and our incentives are. And we can't become the global ubiquitous fintech rails without holding the hands of really big organizations. And I'm going to give you an example of what I mean from my previous company. So my previous company did consumer subscription infrastructure, and we were very instrumental in helping a lot of people go over the top in OTT TV. And the BBC was one of those people who wanted to figure out what they were doing in different regions, because obviously, free to the UK, but not free everywhere else. And all of my competitors and I went in and we pitched the BBC. And the BBC asked us what the integration fee was going to be. And we said, well, look, normally for a customer like you, we and all of our competitors are going to tell you it's about $250,000 a year, or $250,000 for integration and $100,000 to $200,000 ongoing. And what we said to the BBC was, you're the BBC. You're a quasi-government entity. You're huge. You're going to move slow. We're going to put an integration engineer on a plane, maybe two, and they're going to spend a week at BBC headquarters on a whiteboard figuring out what it's going to take to actually get you to a place where you could charge for streaming content. And we did that, and the number ended up being closer to $500,000. And later they pulled us aside and they said, you were the only ones of your competitors who actually understood what it would take to help the BBC make that kind of huge technology lift internally. That's what has to happen here in the blockchain space. You're asking major national banks to change fundamentally how they do business. They need to know that there is a big public company with deep pockets that raised literally billions of dollars in fiat. So, farmers, whenever you're comparing the pre-farm to your farm, remember that the shareholders have to keep taking the dilution of $1 billion here and $1 billion there. It's real money. And it's going to take that kind of money to really advance blockchain generally to where it should be, to where it is, if Swift still exists, it's because it uses the Chia blockchain. So I hope that makes a little more sense to folks. Obviously happy to, answer more questions about that later tonight in general and other places. But, we took a long look at it, the regulatory environment, being able to have public equity that's publicly traded, that we have complied with the spirit of all the securities laws, and then have a Bitcoin style commodity and then distribute that only to people who farm and only to people who've invested. We're making the promise to folks that, we're not giving coins to anybody until everybody has a chance to buy into both the equity and farm. And that actually leads to a little side question. Somebody said, can you use the coins to buy companies? Yeah, indirectly, you probably use our equity to buy companies, and we may use the coins to invest in companies and vice versa. But that's after we're public and after everybody's had a chance to participate. So take a quick look around, make sure there's no other quick questions. If DTC exists, it uses the Chia blockchain. Exactly. Couple highly technical questions. I'd suggest you go to support. One last question before we sign off. Are you doing these weekly? We're going to try to. We're a bit busy in the very, very short term. Sooner or later, we'll have some more support to be able to do these a little more routinely, and I don't have to do them all. I look forward to those days very much. But yeah, and we're trying to keep some topics today. It was just a free for all. Some folks had felt like they hadn't gotten into the clubhouses, and we want to make sure that people could get here and ask questions. Also, some of the clubhouses weren't Chia specific, quite intentionally. In fact, we had one very wonderful human being asking a bunch of questions about Chia on a clubhouse last night after I'd asked people not to ask questions about Chia. But anyway, so look, thank you all. Thanks for being a great community, and happy farming. Good night, all.
Bye.
Good night. Bye.